we're just going to get some feedback on the education, finance, and policy bill that's working its way through the House and Senate right now. My own background, I'm a teacher of 29 years in the Northfield School District. Currently, will be teaching there again next year when the fall year starts up. I've been in the Minnesota Senate. I was in for 3 years in 2008, 9, and 10, and back again, and serving on both Education Policy and Finance Committee. And I will also be serving on the conference committee that's going to be putting together the education bill. So why don't we go around and introduce, give a little bit of background on yourself, and maybe we'll start with the faceless one, Jim Godfrey, current teacher in Cambridge. Jim, go ahead and give us a little introduction.
Teacher at Cambridge-Isanti High School. I'm the co-president of Education Minnesota Cambridge-Isanti. Brian was a super volunteer for me, Brian Wells, your assistant, when I was running for the House Representatives in 2008 and 10. And really interested to see what happens with the education bill that's coming through.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jim. And we have Kelly Smith, Superintendent of the Belle Plaine Public Schools, one of the schools that's in Senate District 20. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Kelly Smith, Superintendent of Belle Plaine Schools. It's my 9th year here, and I'm just anxious to see where we're at in the process of putting together a final omnibus education bill.
Well, thanks. And I believe it's Sheila Pipo, is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us a little more about what you do.
Yes, I'm Sheila Pipo. I'm the Executive Director with the Serve Minnesota Action Network. And that organization implements the Minnesota Reading Corps and Minnesota Math Corps. And I've been working with Minnesota Reading Corps since 2006.
Well, great. And for the next 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever we can work here, we'll just talk a little bit about the bill. I'll bring up some questions, maybe individually, and perhaps there might be some times that you want to weigh in. Of course, over the last 8 to 10 years, we've had some pretty flat funding and actually some cuts to education, and of course the big healthcare costs and insurance costs for employees have eaten up of any kind of increases over the years. And there is some money in this particular budget in a number of different ways. We do have $130 million for all-day kindergarten. A basic funding formula increase is about $100 million. Some early childhood education, about $44 million. Special education, about $9 million. So maybe Superintendent Smith, maybe talk a little bit about the need for additional funding for our schools, and at least what maybe some things that you've seen in Belle Plaine and the real need to increase education funding.
Sure, we've been actually fortunate to be in a growing area, so we've avoided some of the severe cuts that other districts that have not had growth bringing new revenue into their district. But I think you mentioned 2 areas in particular. Special education continues to take a bigger, the cross-subsidy continues to take a bigger piece out of our general fund, and we've had no ways to recoup that money. So that we're excited about any new money that can come in the area of special education. And then certainly early childhood preschool programming, there has been minimal funding in the past for that, and it's certainly an area we're trying to provide more programs, but right now we just don't have the funding for those programs.
Yeah, and Jim, as a teacher, and again I share that wonderful career with you, but tell me a little bit about the kind of maybe cuts or the kind of sacrifices teachers have had to make maybe in the classroom or overall in the last few years because of a lack of good investment in education.
Well, we have had a series of what we'll call flat contracts where basically any increase was maybe to cover our health insurance because the district simply had no more money. We had retirements that we didn't replace, so we've had more students in each classroom. And basically what's happened is the teachers are doing more and more for more and more kids who are getting less and less attention because there are just more of them in front of the teacher at a time. And the teachers feel like they have been sacrificing their time with their families and so on to meet the needs of their communities. and it all sort of stems back to these freezes that have happened. If we had the 130 million you're talking about, we're one of those districts that has all day, everyday kindergarten only for those parents who pay for it, and so we become sort of the district of the haves and the have-nots in those regards too. So that equity is a big issue around here as well.
And Sheila, which school district are you? I know you're not an employee necessarily of the school district. What school district do you reside in?
Our main headquarters are in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm. And I know Minneapolis has had some issues and some cutbacks and a big budget schools there in Minneapolis. Can you comment a little bit on education funding in general for the last few years?
Yes, by getting the extra support getting the support from the state, we've been able to grow our program significantly to the point where we're able to meet 30,000 children just in reading. And that support, that added support, is so necessary because the schools have experienced some significant cuts, and we can provide really trained tutors to get at those kids that maybe don't have extra supports available because the funding's not there. And also with math, the growing demand in the state is unprecedented. There are over 353 schools that were asking for funding, and we're able to hopefully get at 170 of those sites next year.
And your expertise is the math and reading core, I understand, and typically that's a federally funded program, but there is additional state money in that this year. Tell us a little bit more about how you see math and reading as really helping close the achievement gap, but also maybe reaching some kids that might not otherwise have the resource, get those really important resources.
Yeah, math and reading core target the same type of student. They're the students that are partially proficient, so they're not eligible for special education. They're sometimes not eligible for other services the school has provided for the students that have deeper needs. So we're reaching those students that wouldn't have any type of programming otherwise. Like with math core, we'll be able to serve over 4,000 of those students, and again with reading core, with this funding in this bill, we'll be able to reach 30,000. Was there more to your question?
No, that's good. And now tell me what's typical age group that your math and reading core would typically target?
Reading core works with pre-K to grade 3, so we're working with this 3-4-year-olds all the way up to 3rd grade, and then math core serves 4th through 8th grade.
Great. A good segue into funding for all-day kindergarten and the early scholarships. And perhaps, Kelly, do you offer full funding for all-day kindergarten in Belle Plaine? And talk a little bit about that, how that will be helpful to you over there.
Sure. We have been fortunate to have space to offer all-day, everyday K for the past I believe it's 7 years, and we have offered it at no charge. Truly, it became an issue of competition with us. Some of our neighbors were offering it, and we were starting to see children go to neighboring districts because there was free all-day, everyday kindergarten. So in times where we've been cutting budgets, we've actually made sure that we did not touch that piece of the program because we didn't want to start it and then stop it and then start it again. So we're excited about the funding for that. We've actually been subsidizing it through the years, and that's going to help us greatly as we move forward.
And that so you'll get the extra dollars because you're already fully funding it, and those dollars, I believe, the flexibility is that you can use it for other areas of running the school. Correct? Correct.
Yeah, we're currently a slight deficit budget, so and yet we added some staff for next year, which I appreciate our board's support on, but we know dollars are going to be tough as we move forward, so that's going to come in come in handy in the future.
Well, and at Northfield School District, I actually have a first grader, and so And my other children, they offer all-day kindergarten in the Northfield School District, but we had to pay for the other half of the day out of our own pocket. So that was about $350 a month that surely wish I had back then. But I think, as we all know, and maybe, Jim, you could weigh in on what Cambridge does, but we know that investing in early childhood education, the scholarships, the $40 million we're putting into pre-K, just the payoffs in terms of graduation rates and reading literacy and so forth, and less crime rates. I mean, it's unbelievable, the payoff in the long run. So, Jim, you want to weigh in on early childhood education or all-day K?
Yeah, we, as I mentioned a little bit before, we're one of those districts that offer it, but only for those who pay. And again, it's about $350 a month, like you said. And we've discovered that what we have is the well-to-do parents send their children for all day every day, and then the lesser fortunate have to struggle and then find daycare on the alternate days, because we do all day every other day for those that don't qualify. So I think that's really going to help our struggling families not have to find care for their kids on the off days, as well as give them opportunities to get to work. So I think it's going to be an unintended economic boost to this area. Great.
Sheila, talk to me a little bit about the early learning scholarships, and just in principle, we're talking about a $6,000 average scholarship that would reach 7,000 more students, and because you do work with those younger folks, tell us again the value in really putting some money into those early learning scholarships.
Well, my organization is the one that's responsible for placing members into high-quality preschool settings. So to be able to make sure that we have good quality preschool settings where the staff is well trained, that the teachers' aides are well aware of literacy and other education components, that's critical to make sure that time that the young children are spending during the day is well used. That's really important, and that's where Reading Corps can also be very helpful in providing some really, really effective professional development.
Switching gears a little bit, and I thank you. There's a big chunk of the policy bill has to do with student assessments, and we had the grad test, a big part of typical high school students having to pass reading, writing, and soon to be would have been math grad tests. So maybe Jim, we want to comment on high stakes testing in general, or I can let you know, of course, that the new suite of assessments would have an Explore test in 8th grade, a planned test in 10th grade, to get that better diagnostics early, and then instead of a high-stakes test to graduate, it would be replaced with an ACT test, and we're really trying to get at career and college readiness. So we're pretty excited about the new language in the bill. It was based on recommendations from a working group on assessments with a lot of experts across the state weighing in. So if you want to comment a little bit about testing in general, Jim,
Sure.
How's it going?
Well, oddly enough, I'm in charge. I'm the school assessment coordinator for Cambridge, and so I have a lot of experience with the MCAs. And it's funny, I was talking with my principal about 3 months ago, saying, wouldn't it be nice if we could do the ACTs, and that way those students would have a score and they'd know how prepared they were for college instead of the MCAs. I've noticed that I do a lot of grad testing with seniors that know that they only have to take it 3 times, and so that third time is really, they just go through and don't really think about it and don't do, I think, as good of a score as they would have done had it not been their third attempt. However, we have a lot of seniors that are not going to be getting their diploma because despite interventions and so on, they are unable to meet, which is really a very rigorous test. Sorry, my dog. And so, despite their best efforts and how much they've learned and how much effort they've put into school, they still won't show the diploma just because of that one assessment that they can't get past. And so I'm glad that reading and writing is not going to be, sorry, you don't get your diploma because you didn't pass it kind of thing. It's a math program where they can remediate and try it again would be better. but just going to the ACT or something that gives them college readiness would be the way to go, I think.
Yeah, and I think as we think about assessments in general, I think this fatalistic approach where people actually, you got to pass the test or you don't graduate, and it's really difficult in terms of students' ability in one day, in 1 week, in 1 hour to try to show that they are college ready. There's some real issues with that. I think what we have created is much forward-looking testing. And with an eye on career and college readiness. Any comments, Kelly, on testing in general in the new bill?
Well, just I happened to see a tweet from the commissioner. I was happy to see she put it out there, and she just referenced that we can have a child who's a salutatorian and scores a 29 on the ACT, but fails that one grad test and can't graduate from our high schools. And I'm very appreciative of the direction this is going. We're about student growth and preparing them for the future, and this does a much better job of that for all of us.
Well, and the feedback that I'm getting, and Representative Breinert in the House is the author over there, it's from the experts, the school boards, the principals, the counselors, the math teachers, the parents. I mean, we're really getting really good feedback. Sheila, obviously we certainly want our students to graduate knowing, know how to read and write and math, but any comments on high stakes testing in general? We still keep the MCAs in our elementary grades, but again, we're kind of refocusing on remediation and diagnostic at the high school level, and still trying to give them the help they need, because oftentimes in 11th grade, it's too late. So maybe a little comment on testing in general.
Yeah, I agree with the other participants who've talked about this seems to be headed in the right direction, and I think the ACT may have some more personal, it may mean more for the students. Sometimes the MCA seems a little bit removed, but the MCAs is their college preparation, so I think that that's a great move. And also to remove some of that fatalistic, I think that's really important as well, because I think students can get discouraged and kind of throw in the towel a little bit earlier than they need to.
Well, thanks. And a couple other maybe areas we might touch on. The Senate bill does reinstate the general education levy at $20 million, as I heard from in terms of the experts on how we reform the way we finance education. I think the general education levy was something that they agreed with. Maybe Superintendent Smith, talk a little bit about, I know you're a Schools for Equity in Education school, and as Northfield is, but we have a real fundamental problem in how we fund schools, relying too much on property taxes. Maybe talk a little bit about the general levy, or how we might even improve more in the future our funding.
Sure, and I think Cambridge is also a member of C, so Jim's district is a member as well. Certainly, I think their slogan this year, it shouldn't matter what zip code a child is from, has been very effective in trying to lay out the differences between school districts with varying property wealth. Our district is a low property wealth district, and it costs us 2 to 2.5 times as much per property owner to raise referendum dollars. So we do struggle in that area. We're fortunate we have a $300 operating levy in place, but when the state average is $800, $900 right now for districts, we're not so sure we could ever get our public to support that step to that next level of funding. So the general ed levy coming back helps to set a baseline for all districts, and then I would certainly like to see work done on the equalization beyond that, so it would address some of the needs that poor property wealth districts have.
I think you're right, and I really commended the working group that talked about education finance. Tom Melcher from the Minnesota Department of Education, a strong believer in that. I think we got to start You know, we want to do much more for education after years of kind of neglect here, and I think we're on the right track. We obviously, in the bigger budget picture, a $627 million deficit, but we do have some needs out there, and I think this is a good first step. Well, I'm going to kind of wrap up, but I would like any of you to maybe weigh in on any other aspects of the education bill, or what would you like to see the legislature do to finish up here in terms of education as we go to conference committees and as we get a bill up to the governor. So perhaps, yeah, anybody want to jump in here on the last word?
Yep, I am working on the teacher evaluation plan for our district, and we are discovering that trying to free up teachers to do quality professional development with their peers is requiring time that we just don't have any money to pay for. You know, do we bring in subs? Do we give them an extra duty? Do we, you know, so which means somebody else has to cover it? And we're really struggling with finding the financing, and we're struggling with that equity too. You know, we're a property poor district. We're near the bottom in what we take in per capita, and so you know, anything that they can do to help fund the implementation of the teacher evaluation law, or even delay it a year or two to give us more time to figure out how we're going to do this, would be very beneficial for our teachers and our parents.
Well, thanks, Jim, and I know that there is a real interest in making sure that we have a good evaluation system in place. Obviously, the pilot programs are out there right now, but you're right, in the Senate version, there is a one-year delay. It's not that we're trying to put it off, but there is a real funding issue in trying to make sure that either teachers or principals are able to get to all the classrooms in a timely manner to give positive feedback. So thanks, Jim, for those comments. Kelly, any final thoughts on the...
Well, I would just say thanks to the Senate and the House for their work so far. Obviously, there are some differences, but the similarities we're very excited about, and I hope that you get a target that's closer to the House side. That would certainly help things out as well. But that's certainly going to be a big piece as you move forward. And I wish you well in the conference committee. I'm glad an educator sitting on that committee, and should be a very interesting process.
Yes, and my colleagues would, I think, hope that we take the Senate side as well, or the House side as well on some of those, but I appreciate that. And of course, Kelly, I'll be calling you if I have any last-minute questions about education funding. And Sheila, thanks for joining us again today, and any final thoughts?
No, just thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for allowing us to be partners with the schools so that we can reach as many kids as possible.
Very good. Well, again, thanks for my inaugural run into the Google Hangout, and I appreciate having all of you with us today. And I guess you can find this on YouTube, and we'll get a link out to those of you that want to catch up with that. But again, thanks to Jim Godfrey, to Kelly Smith, and to Sheila Pipo for joining us here on the Google Hangout for E12 in 2013. So thanks so much.
Very good.